speaking list up. This is the month of October. Thanks, Mike. Oh, I should make sure to join the correct teens chat, shouldn't I? That one is not working. Okay. Okay. I'll do this one every shift slightly towards the middle.
Yep.
Let us know online if you have trouble hearing, because we only have one of our microphones working as opposed to two of the microphones working. With that, oh, pardon?
I think that we can hear you guys.
Okay. Why does it say Zara when I don't see Zara? There's a lot of meeting people.
Might be closer to maybe that.
Oh. Okay. Sure. And actually, I'll make sure to join on the computer as well, just so I can see the chat properly. All right. Welcome to October 30th. Today is the day of the WUSA monthly board meeting. We're calling to order at 6:08 p.m. It's only a few minutes late. We have the agenda before us. Does anyone have any additional items for the agenda today? I've already expressed that I think 8.4 is out of order. But that comes up in confidential, so we'll deal with that during confidential. Other than that, are we ready to approve the agenda?
All good?
Sure. Vote to approve. I guess I could also just said, is anyone against? So that seems, you're against it? No? Okay. The agenda is fine. We have past minutes of the previous meeting. Motion there for approval of the minutes. Can I get a second? Sure. All right. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, we'll go to the vote. All votes against the approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. All right. All votes for approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Yeah, sorry. I'm just crunching through the boring stuff. We'll have the presentation of it. I think that passes, and all abstentions. Should make sure to lower my hand. Cool. Well then, actually, the territorial acknowledgement. Board of Directors of Waterloo Undergraduate Student Association acknowledges that the University of Waterloo is on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Organization operates on the Haldeman Tract land promised to 6 nations, which includes 6 miles on either side of the Grand River. In my participation in convocation last week, I was reminded of the songs that were played at Wounded Knee on the 100th anniversary, as it was part of the ceremony proceedings, and it really moved me how much people were willing to sort of come together in protest, despite the fact that it was illegal for them to gather in groups larger than 3, and sort of find solidarity through song. And I found that very moving. So that's my sort of additional thought on our territorial acknowledgement today. Sort of that memory that until very recently, Indigenous peoples weren't allowed even into higher education without losing their status, and that they were so willing to move forward despite the crimes committed against them. Our priorities for today are supposed to be about strengthening advocacy and accountability for the organization. Do we have conflicts of interest, of pecuniary interest for today's business? I think there probably are definitely conflicts, but I don't know if they are pecuniary or not. Is anyone likely to make additional money among our directors?
I would say conflict of interest applies to me. I added for you, like anybody who has anything. I bring up this point, I'll bring it for a board like this.
Sure.
On 8.4, like if anybody who thinks that might influence that might declare it, doesn't mean you can't do it. It's just the board's declaration.
Yeah, so I think
That's what I'm saying.
8.4 is pretty obvious, but other than 8.4, are we saying anything? Scott's old. It's not something we've done, is it?
No.
Okay.
I hope you don't have the Wi-Fi, should have asked them.
I think that it's like another call came through or something, but.
Who does that?
No, we're still there. All right. That's the only one to note.
Okay.
No items are for adoption by consent, but we do have a presentation from House Canada, which I've been told should come first. So, Mike, I suppose, why don't you let it House Canada so we can hear about their proposal for us?
May I?
Or, sure, Kumar, feel free to motivate.
Thank you. Mike, are the folks from House in the lobby? No problem. Do you mind just sending them a note while I introduce them right now, if that's okay? They can help that on, please, thank you.
Do you have? I think it's.
So I won't get too much into what House Canada is in details, because they're gonna kind of explain it a lot better than I will. But they've approached us, myself, and a few other senior managers of WUSA, and I kind of took this one on, just to kind of field it for our board. Basically, this thing came up in the whole piece of my reading. But I feel that they could bring some value, or so hearing them out could bring some value to this board as, one of our off-campus housing stances calls for collaborative efforts, working with various stakeholders, including government bodies and community organizations to improve conditions for availability of off-campus housing. They are a nonprofit organization that kind of helps with the exploration, the financing, the pretty much entire back end and of the people process involved for WUSA to get into off-campus housing in one capacity or another. So a lot of kind of our challenges for that is we don't have the people power and technical expertise, to necessarily secure real estate, look for financing, know the financial partners, both private and government. These folks this is their wheelhouse. They're a nonprofit organization, and they've modeled themselves after some similar organizations in Quebec that have been quite successful in this endeavor. So again, I believe they're on the call right now, and if they are ready, I will pass it over to them.
Hi, folks. Yeah, I'm here. Thank you so much for having me. Would I be able to share my screen and share a presentation? Okay. Let's see here. Okay. And are we able to see my screen?
Yeah, so just for your reference, we have two screens here. So if we appear to be looking this way, there's a second screen which you can barely see in the edge of the camera.
Okay.
So some of us might look one way or the other.
Sounds good. I really appreciate that. Well, folks, my name's Natty. I'm the co-executive director of Housing Our University Students Equitably, which is an acronym for House Canada. In my background, I've been in housing advocacy circles for a while. I co-founded a community housing association to help people that were dealing with multi-tenant housing issues at York University, and pretty quickly joined House as a program director and helped mobilize some of the levy referendum campaigns. I am now the co-executive director as of May, similarly around some of your election cycles. So again, it's a great opportunity to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I'm going to go ahead and start our presentation. I'm going to be mindful of time if we still only have that 10-minute slot. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I'll get started. So our acronym is Housing Our University Students Equitably. Our goal is to develop nonprofit affordable housing for students. That includes recent graduates, depending on the structure that y'all would have. And we're not reinventing the wheel. I believe, as it was mentioned, we're looking at a successful model in Quebec that UTIL, the Unité de Travail pour l'Implantation de Logement Étudiant, has been able to scale really successfully. And they do that by working with students' unions like the Université de Québec Trois-Rivières students' unions to develop projects like La Canapé, which is almost 200 units of nonprofit affordable housing. And the reason that we organize this model is for reasons that we all know too well. There's a massive shortage of housing for students, including folks who are transitioning from school into the workforce. The existing housing that's predominantly private market housing, or at least that most students are accessing in the private market, is increasingly unaffordable. The new housing isn't being built quickly enough to meet demands, and so it's contributing to those high costs. And most of that new housing, again, is private market supply, and so it's often to satisfy investors' needs rather than meet young people or students' needs. These are what are the makings of a rental housing crisis, and we believe that students have a massive impact on local rental housing markets. Y'all know this better than we do. You have 42% of all purpose-built student accommodations in Waterloo. I think what's shocking, and in the documentation we sent earlier, we looked at the average market rents, but when we look at our median market rents in Waterloo, they're actually outpacing those average market rent increases, which means that everyday people are paying increasingly more, and not just the folks who are paying at the highest tier, at the lowest tier. And they're at 9% year over year for the last 5 years. To give you an idea, our rent cap guidelines are set around 2.5%. So that's about 4 times what our rent cap guidelines are. And so for students, this is a real crisis. Typically, universities only have enough beds for 1 in 10 students. And for the majority of students, they're about 40% that are living with their families. The remaining 50 or 52% that are renting privately predominantly. And they're paying a 25% premium if they're renting near their post-secondary institution. And so students are, in this particular situation, because they are transitory. If you're doing a 1 to 2 year master's or a 3 to 4 year bachelor's, or staying a little bit longer, depending on your situation, you're also probably moving from place to place. And because we have vacancy decontrols, landlords are able to reach those 9% year over year rent increases. The other piece is that there's also a real incentive for them to displace students, because it's, over 11 years, you can double your income. And so, we acknowledge that there's this over reliance on, the private market when we're trying to understand, why that might be. Some of the challenges that we come into today is that a lot of the public funding programs under the National Housing Strategy, or the National Housing Strategy itself, doesn't include students, so it includes young people. Typically, that's young people at risk of homelessness. And then the programs don't necessarily include the most affordable housing design typologies, which is dorm-style housing. And so a lot of our advocacy work with the CMHC program managers are around including those definitions and just trying to negotiate what that would look like in our applications. But ultimately, if you're studying at Waterloo, y'all know better than I, you're probably paying twice as much for your rent for tuition, or at least on average. We know that there hasn't always been funding for student housing. A lot of the existing housing that we see is from this novel period in the 1950s, where the governments were trying to accommodate a post-war era group of folks and industrialize that workforce, and they built housing accordingly. There was a big shift in the 70s, both in our political orientation, but in our economic, let's say, status. There was a recession, there was a crisis, and there's a lot of cuts. And universities responded in kind by saying, "Hey, we're just going to leave it to the market." And this has kind of come to a head more recently. A lot of the housing issues that we see around affordability, around availability, but also around student landlord-tenant relations, they kind of have come to a head, and universities are recognizing that, right? So When we look at York University, they've moved to build the Quad, or the University of Toronto, they've built Campus One, the new Bay Street residence for McMaster University. All of these are examples of public-private partnerships to build purpose-built student accommodations, which y'all know. The challenge is typically they're land leases. So the private developers want to get a pretty hefty return on their investment, and usually they're luxury or condo style units that are designed to attract students rather than retain them. And so our approach was, very cognizant of this. House started as a housing committee at York University. We held a housing symposium, and that year UTL had just opened or finished construction on the Woodnote Cooperative, and they would be welcoming students the next year in 2020. But they started similarly. They were Concordia students who ran a levy at their campus, invested in affordable housing, and 6 years later had a building. And so we wanted to take what they were doing and really just bring this to Ontario, because they had taken this levy model and scaled it to different campuses. We wanted to do the same, and we really quickly realized that we could make the most of this opportunity and build the most housing if we scale it across Canada, and that's where House Canada came from. So UTL is one of the fastest growing companies in Canada last year, I should say, but it's because they built these 13 different real estate projects, secured over $500 million in investment, built over 2,000 units, and they've done that by working with students' unions across 5 different municipalities to achieve their goals. And so we're structured quite similarly to do the same. House, at the end of the day, we also research, we advocate for, and we develop affordable, nonprofit, and cooperative housing. The type of housing we work with y'all to determine. That housing will be 30 minutes from your campus, if not on campus. We tend to work with university institutions to see if there are land that is available, or with municipalities. Typically, we purchase and lease those properties back to our chapters. Now, this is one way that we ensure that the housing or the buildings are perpetually affordable. House is owned and operated by students' unions, and so they're essentially the ones that ensure that our mandate to build affordable and cooperative housing and maintain it is in place. All of the housing is also socially financed. We don't look at private equity investors or to satisfy private equity investors. We use reserve funds or social finance campaigning to do that, whether it be like community bonds or levy fee models, and we're growth oriented. So a lot of the co-ops that we've seen in the past, for example, they tend to fall in this affordability trap. Our goal is to mimic what WCRI is doing and to really act as a buttress against that, right? And that through that community land trust model, we're able to do that. And ultimately, what we do is we help students raise capital and secure gap financing. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. We help them retain nonprofit development expertise. So we work with a variety of builders and connect them to architects, designers, whoever we need to kind of get it through that pre-development process. And that helps us develop and scale projects more quickly. A little bit on our governance structure, typically, right? And this is just a horizon of what it looks like. We have a board of directors. It's governed or is made up with 2 voting members from each of our different member chapters. We currently have 2 chapters. So there's House York and House UTM. Each of these chapters have 2 voting seats per students' union. So one for the graduate, one for the undergraduate, as well as one for the labor union. And then there are 2 students that are elected from the student body at large. And ultimately, those chapters guide the work around retaining local housing experts, and our national board of directors, they help advance development at the different member campuses at the different stages that they're in. And that development looks a little bit different than for-profit developers. We really think it brings together the best of all worlds. You get affordable housing for students, a reliable partner for post-secondary institutions, democratic control by mission-aligned nonprofits, i.e., students' unions. And it starts out in that non-normative way, right? We're looking for an endorsement or support for whether it be a chapter or at least if it is a contractual relationship, to have 2 executives from WUSA who'd be committed to helping us move our projects forward. And that are there when we're meeting with builders and potentially other intermediaries. Ultimately, that group of folks, whether it's a board or the folks who are kind of charged with that work, we'll be looking at what a social finance model looks like. So if we're tapping into some of your funding reserves, or if we need to run a levy fee referendum campaign when we're thinking about long-term development goals, ultimately we're trying to figure out what we need for starting capital and to get gap financing. And that gap financing moves us from the land financing stage to the development financing stage to the construction financing stage. It helps us fill those gaps. Ultimately, we use whatever equity we raise to finance the acquisition of land, or to assemble land, and we're able to rely on some social lenders or at least social investment funds to help us get chunks of money that are at a lower interest rate if we're not able to sole source from a social lender. And we're able to then use that land to access CMHC programs or at least some other public funding programs at the municipal level and provincial level to help us with those pre-development costs, right? So when we're thinking about our permits and approvals or site assessments, everything that goes into making sure that we're ready for construction. And at this stage, we're also working on developing a grant that really suits the development needs, right? So if it's a cooperative development program grant at the end line, we want a cooperative, that's where we focus. And we'd highly recommend that considering the moment that we're in right now. Or if we prefer a nonprofit housing structure, the apartment construction loan program. Ultimately, when we're in the construction financing stage, those loans end up paying off the first two financing stages. And throughout that, we're trying to determine, what residence intake would look like, what occupancy standards would look like, if there's a right of first refusal that y'all want to establish, based on the consultations that we've had with students. Y'all know WCRI, so I won't say much other than, we work with Lana Wong, and Lana is very interested in being a property management partner with us if we did move forward with development with WUSA. And that development can look like a lot of things. Again, WCRI, they've been successful in acquiring, mid and high-rise buildings, 5-bedroom unit buildings, sorry. And that's one way of doing it. Guelph, they've had an existing levy. They were like Campus Co-op or Kingston Co-op buying, single-family homes, triplexes, duplexes, converting them into co-ops. But Guelph, with that levy, we're eventually able to develop new build housing as well. So these low-rise and mid-rise units. Or we could do what WUSA did and tap into an existing pool of public funding, just like the Cooperative Development Program, which will finance up to 100% of eligible project costs. Up to a third of it is repayable after 20 years, and really just build the most dense cooperative housing that we can for students. And we're off to the right step. Our first step really is to meet with the executive. We're trying to understand, what your needs are. And for us, it means really trying to endorse and support what would be either a local chapter or work towards a contractual relationship where, we have two execs from your, two executives to work with and guide our project forward. Part of that work is thinking about where we can leverage our organizational capacities and really thinking about what that finance model looks like, what the annual reserve situation is, or if we have to do a levy fee, if we need to get innovative and potentially look at a community bond. And really answer the questions around what's your financial ability and what's your capacity and authority, i.e. our levies kind of housed within the students union, and then working to mobilize what would be that chapter or that contractual relationship. So part of our preliminary research is about working with y'all to see when you have events and when you're doing tabling, engaging with students and try to build up a pretty good sample of folks to do community consultations with. Our community engagement includes folding y'all up into our educational programming and into our student housing survival guide workshops. And again, building capacity and support for the work that we're doing and getting folks familiar with house. Throughout that, we're looking at sites. We're doing planning assessments, trying to figure out where the best sites might be. And right now we're looking at some sites that WUCRI had actually suggested. And we're going to be able to do a financial analysis and really narrow down what that equity cost will be. And kind of map those sites out and potentially start with the acquisition process sooner than later. And so that's all I have for y'all right now. I hope that's reasonable. I think I was just 3 minutes over time, but thank you so much for listening. And I'll take any questions.
All right. Thanks for your presentation. You seem like you have a question to start with.
Okay. I do. So it was so awesome because I did get your email originally. You guys did send us. I'm gonna get forward it more and also saying to take a look into it and do some more research. My only question is then I'm assuming if we're to pursue with this and move forward with this agreement and so on, this is going to be a cooperative housing bill that is reserved only for undergraduate students at University of Waterloo. Or is it okay? Perfect. That was the key. Or would it be open to the wider community? But it is reserved for our students. Fantastic.
I think we would work towards your goals, and I think that we have a really great opportunity to do that. Y'all seem to be in a position to do that, and absolutely, I think that's what we've been thinking about when we're looking at different sites.
I think it's a good thing to look into for sure.
Let's start with Teresa. or sorry, I guess let's continue with Teresa.
Hey, Nathi. Great presentation. I just had a question specific to Waterloo region because I know you mentioned possibly partnering WCRI. Could you just go into a little detail about what that partnership would look like in terms of like ownership and how WUSA would be able to work with WCRI on managing those off-campus properties?
Yeah, it would be a contractual relationship, kind of mostly for staffing capacity. Really, WCRI, they have experience. They have a good relationship with the CMHC. They're a great person to have on our applications, kind of moving forward. And what they're looking for is a way to kind of expand their revenue options. So rather than just owning and operating housing, looking at property management. And so those are some considerations. And WCRI isn't, our only option. yourWUSA has expressed a kind of similar interest in. Depending on what kind of buildings we decide to acquire, we might prefer one over the other. WCI is just in the region, and they seem very interested in this work. I hope that provides a little bit more clarity and insight. It wouldn't necessarily be like a voting seat per se.
Oh yeah, no, that completely answers my question. Thanks, Nathi.
Other questions for board at the moment? I guess I do have one, which is, given this point in the process, I assume we have no even rough idea about financial outcomes. How do you guys go about picking sites, building them up? What's the sort of expertise in your team and in your past builds that you can draw from?
That's a great question. We have no new builds, and I do want to be clear about that. We've acquired one property. It's we are currently in a leasehold agreement with a property owner for one property. It's a nonprofit co-op for York students. And through that agreement, we've been able to negotiate, really affordable housing for students. I think to your question around like how we identify those sites and, for example, why we chose that site, we have internal capacity. So we have a planner that works on our planning director, I should say, our staff team. And they do those initial assessments. So we have a meeting, for example, scheduled with the city of Waterloo to basically say, hey, this is exactly what we do, similar presentation to what we're doing with y'all, but to get an idea on any opportunities that there are available to build housing. They've shared a couple with us, and we've also contacted the region of Waterloo. But it's really about sourcing those opportunities, and that's why partners like WCRI are so great. When you have a local partner, they can give you sites that, for example, they've considered that have since long passed. And then negotiating what that working relationship looks like is something that we do well, and we believe in investing in the cooperative sector. And so that site process right now, we're looking at private market lands. We are reaching out to the municipality for public lands that are available. We haven't reached out to the province or looked at any federal lands quite yet, so just the municipality. And then we're reaching out to local partners to see if they've passed up any development opportunities. And it's not just WCRI. The folks at Union Cooperative, so Sean Campbell, they have set up a new nonprofit that's looking at buying large sets of land and then piecing off some of it to other nonprofits. And then similarly, we're trying to work on a solutions lab grant with both Sean and then Sean Goby, who's from the Waterloo Institute for Social Innovation Research, or WISER. And so they help us do a lot of that work. Waterloo is a great region in the co-op sector, and so we already have a lot of investment here. If that provides some clarity around our planning process.
Yeah, no, I feel like I only have more questions, but you did answer the one I had, so I appreciate that. Any other additional questions for today? Yes.
Nathi, thanks for the great presentation. I was wondering if you could explain to me what exactly is the purpose of the national board? Like what do they control as we go through this process?
Part of our goal is to set up a rotating equity trust that serves students. That's what has been successful in Quebec with UTO. They set up their push fund, and then they did a national student housing investment fund, and they're separate funds. The board is in the position to help kind of manage those funds. The separate piece that I would add is that, where we do levies on different campuses, we're trying to think about some of the long-term elements of that. And so making decisions around potentially setting up like bursaries or awards for students, those are things that the board help us regulate. And then they help us a lot with our governance. So, for example, if we set up a chapter, or if we were just looking at having a contractual relationship, we might look at having a board member being a part of those meetings to help convey everything to the board and see if they can help push or advance any things at that level. I think the last thing is that, again, typically how House is structured, if we're not doing a contractual kind of working relationship or agreement, again, we're buying land or we're trying to buy these buildings. Our board helps manage that. And so if we're going to be borrowing against those lands or borrowing against those buildings to help support a project in, let's say PEI, where the levy might be smaller and they can't necessarily raise all that money themselves, or, I'll leave it there. Our board helps kind of make those decisions. Right now, they're helping us run a nonprofit, which is great, and setting us up for success. But that's kind of what that relationship looks like.
Gotcha, thanks.
All right, I don't see any other questions for now. Thank you very much for coming out to talk to us. It's certainly an exciting opportunity that I think we'll probably give serious thought to. Yes. Is there anything else you felt the need to bring up with the presentation? All right. Well, thanks again for coming, and best of luck with the city of Waterloo. I know that when we were there trying to talk about affordability or listening in on affordability recently, they got bombarded by a bunch of developers from out of town at the same time. So that was really enjoyable to experience, and hopefully you will have the same time. It really gets in the way of you trying to talk about the actual issue at hand. Okay. Yeah.
Right. No, thank you so much for your time, y'all, and it's been a pleasure. I look forward to hearing back from y'all, and we'll follow up. Yes. Bye for now.
Okay. I think he departed the meeting. 6 of us total. 6 of us. Did I say y'all a bunch? Okay, now I'm nervous about saying y'all. Do we want to talk about this for a minute, or is that more of age? Okay. Initial straw poll. Let's just go from there. Marici has received a phone call. Okay. Well, initial straw poll. Are people generally positive or generally negative on this at the moment? Just before we get into details, just to start with.
I think it's really good. I think it's a good opportunity. I do want to say this is a major financial decision. Like, it is a huge thing, which would probably put other expansion projects, if we want to do it, possibly delayed. Do I think it's better than some other projects that we may consider this year? Possibly. I think it's a major thing if we acquire land.
As I think I've actually promised to Jeff, if this does come up, I have already said I would make a substantial donation of that money.
But I think it's really something that I would like to see further discussion on. Hopefully a proposal to even be reviewed by the board, to see if it's something they want to go forward.
Just to include our online people, we'll do Teresa, then Fatima. Okay. Oh yeah.
Wait, so do I go like now? Me?
Yes. Yes.
Thanks for checking me, Aria. You're right. Like, we probably do need to see a bit more of a fleshed out proposal. You could probably tell from my initial reaction when you mentioned in the board chat, but I am really, really excited about this opportunity. I'm consciously trying very hard to see if there are any catches or things to be wary of with this company. I can't find any. So please, if you guys see anything, tell me, because what I'm seeing right here is an amazing opportunity to bring housing at cost to students and alleviate some of the biggest financial pressures that our undergraduate population sees, especially those who are in co-op streams and are finding themselves needing to switch housing, every 4 months. I'm sure, like, I know students, and I'm sure you all know students who have had to seriously consider going homeless for a co-op term or a study term just because they could not find housing that was within their budget or close enough to the university that was feasible for them to commute. So I'm really looking forward to hearing more from House Canada. Also, like, the fact that it's cooperatively owned makes me really excited about it. There's been discussions at City Council about the rising issues of rent evictions in the region. If you're not familiar with what that is, essentially it's landlords using the excuse of performing renovations on a lot or a property in order to evict tenants that are currently paying lower rent than what they might be able to get out of newer tenants because of Ontario housing law. So having cooperatively owned housing in general in the region is a huge boon. And the fact that, that this seems to be a largely student-driven initiative makes me really excited. So I'm feeling super positive about this, trying to be cautious about it. So I'm hoping you guys can check me along the way, because right now I'm feeling like we need to go full steam on this. So yeah, those are my thoughts.
Photo.
I don't have a lot additional to say to Teresa and Farah, but I would personally want to.
Oh, sorry. You sounded a little robot-y.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, that's better.
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that I kind of second both of the points that Arya and Teresa brought up. However, I'd want to actually see the proposal in the sense of how we would be involved in, like, to what capacity. And like another thing I'm just curious about is like how large is the success they've seen at York, as they kept mentioning that. So I'd want to see that aspect as well.
Just because we appear to have an additional visitor in the call, Bonita, would you care to identify yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Benita. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the operations director at House.
Oh, thank you.
Nice to meet you, folks. Yeah.
Sorry, we weren't expecting you to still be in the call after the presentation ended.
Oh, no problem. Sorry about that. I can leave.
Thank
If
you.
you have any
Sorry.
questions, feel free to email. And I know you guys are already in contact with Nappy. All right. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Just a couple things. Yeah, it's quite a unique opportunity, and the organization has informally discussed about getting into the sector. But again, we lack the people power and the expertise to do it. So obviously they're the ones that potentially can be that gap to fill. Some things that we would have to obviously do is, full risk assessments around it. But it could be a very unique way to put some of our capital to work. We have a lot of reserves, as we know, our balance sheets are publicly available. So some unique ways that we can leverage some of those reserves and get financing. I think something like, if I'm not mistaken, you may know as little as 5% down, and the rest of it can all be financed. So on $100 million building, it's only $5 million we need to put up, and the rest being financed, and then obviously through rental incomes and such. If we were to do a 350-person bed venture building, that's about 1% of our population. That could be a good start, potentially, maybe less, maybe smaller, maybe something that we can build up to 4% over the next 5-10 years. Those are some targets and some things that I think that we may want to look into, seeing where we want to go with it outside of just going into it. But yeah, just some initial thoughts and just some parameters that I figured I'd share with you folks.
You have 35,000, nothing like that. So it
Yeah.
will be a steady.
One thing that we might want to consider, maybe at stage 2, if we do continue to talk with these guys, is pulling in the grad students. And I know they won't be able to contribute nearly as much, but it is polite. Yeah.
One other thing is, when I asked them, we can work in an arrangement where with House Canada, where they hold the property in trust. But I honestly think we're in a financial position that we can still be the owner of that property. So if we aren't happy with that, we can leave. So that is something that is very on the table. We don't have to fully give it. We can be a member, we can own the property, we can set those parameters and use them as just a professional kind of organization that handles the administrative and people heavy lifting of the project.
And Jeff, I think that was a bit of your hesitancy specifically, right? Talking about national board situation.
Yeah, I guess I was just curious.
Is now joining.
Oh,
Welcome. Welcome.
well, at least this time we have warning.
I'll say something about GSA. I think that's something that we can explore, assuming they also pay, like they put a levy for their students too.
Yeah.
Like that's the way.
Or it's if we have an extra event, it's whatever. Don, hello.
I just had a thought. You have some expertise available to you, I think, on request through Kitchener Housing and Waterloo Regional Housing. They're involved in a whole lot of not-for-profit geared to income housing, and they know the area, they know the developers, they might have a pretty good handle on the property for development. They could probably give you some really good advice or at least questions to ask moving forward. So just a suggestion, especially Kitchener Housing, they're huge and they've been operating for many years, so they may have some good expertise to lend you. Lori Trumper is the executive director there. If you want an introduction, I'd be very glad to do that.
Don, how do you spell Trumper?
Trumper, Trumper.
Okay. That feels like one of the ones that you can get wrong pretty easily.
Yeah, right.
Oh, you just posted her LinkedIn, Teresa, haven't you? Thank you very much. Okay. Is that all for House for now, or do people want to? I mean, we don't have to actually like make a decision on this as much as.
Is there any follow-up that you folks
Yeah.
want me to do? I'm more than happy to any further information or.
Are we okay to request?
Substantial plan.
Yeah, for Kumar, well, for staff to whoever's the partner.
Yeah.
To look into a more concrete proposal to come to them.
Or some maybe some high level options.
Yeah,
Sure.
And then you can
Sort of
high-level options.
styles that they
Yeah.
go for. That seems probably like a good choice.
The other two have the or to request that motion.
I don't think we actually did motion this one.
Oh, okay, we'll bring it back.
Yeah. We'll bring it back.
Yeah, you're good. Teresa, I'll give you the last thing to say on this so that we keep moving because I know that. Alex
Yeah, I
also
think
had
one more
really-
thing to ask about as well was they mentioned something about like distances from campus. Like there was like a 30-minute benchmark there. Just like wanting to clarify, like is that like a hard max in terms of distance from campus, or like is that by walking or by commute or like what, or like bus commute, or like what does that look like exactly? That information would probably be nice.
Yeah, they didn't have a fuller presentation, but in the interest of 10 minutes and us not talking about properties, they cut it. But the site selections that they had in some models that they showed us were all within like a 5 to 10 minute drive or public transit from the campus. And we would set those conditions.
Oh, okay, excellent.
All right, let's move along for the sake of time. We're moving now into our new business, which is an item from ERC that I think Marvin. Oh, that's not what it says, but I hear you. I think as I mentioned on Monday, I would like to split the vote on the two be it further resolves that because the first one comes from ERC, the second one comes from the Governance Department. So ERC submitted what's the word? The final report from the ERO and CRO, as well as the recommendation for the approval of the results and the ratification of the results. The be it further resolved that has accompanying it the plan of action as well, if I understand that correctly. That's the way I'm going to split this. We can call it 4.1, 4.2 if anyone thinks, but I think that's pretty reasonable because I think these are slightly different discussions. Because one is just acknowledging the referendum and the other one is discussing next steps. And I think that those will possibly be useful to discuss separately. Alex?
No.
Okay. Then, as part of ERC, I'll move the first question, which is be it resolved that the board approves the results of the Responsible Partnership and Investments Referendum 2024 as well as the CRO ERO report. First half. Can I get a second on that motion? All right. Any discussion on the ratification? Did people read the report from Martin? It's a really short one.
Yes, because it was short.
It was nice and short. Done.
Can I ask a question? Would you be approving the results or would you be receiving the results? What is the action here that's required?
Our actual term is ratify, but the functionally is the same. Does that make sense?
Yep,
Okay.
it's good.
It's
Just confirming that.
yes, we're confirming that these words for the intent of the discussion mean the same thing, approving / ratifying / no?
Approval and ratification are kind of different because it's already been like, the results don't need that formal approval. So you're confirming.
Sure.
that-
Okay, ratification of the results,
so you're confirming.
which is friendly. Discussion on Marvin's report and the ratification. Okay. Guess we move to the vote because that was so surprisingly fast. Sure. Let's begin with all for the ratification of the results of the referendum. So, do we have all 12? Oh, that is everyone. That is a unanimous vote for. We do not need to complete the remaining aspects there. The report, Marvin's CRO report is unanimously accepted. The vote has been ratified. The second aspect, Fatima, do you have something to say or is your just hand lingering?
Sorry, it's just learning. I'll put it down.
Okay, no worries. The second aspect is now into the plan of action as well. So that's the next steps part. Which I suppose I should either motivate myself. Yeah, why don't I do that? Okay, I'll move that the board authorize the officers and advocacy support staff to present the referendum results to the relevant University of Waterloo authorities and engage them on the next steps regarding implementation. Can I find a seconder? Aria, second time. Now I kind of expect more questions on this one. So opening the floor now to discussion on the implementation plan and the authorizing officers and advocacy support staff. I think we're starting with Sarah. Is that right? Sure, Sarah. And hopefully I won't lead the timer.
I had a comment on the next steps portion of the plan of action, specifically the fourth point related to APC. When I was reading it, I was kind of having like difficulty seeing how advocacy around the referendum results would fall under a safety and community advocacy stance. I understand the attempt to like apply the results more broadly, but it seems like the referendum had some pretty specific asks related to university partnerships and investment factors. And safety seems like a quite a departure from those objectives. And I feel like it runs the risk of bogging down the safety stance while also not doing justice to advocacy around the referendum results. So I actually brought this up at the last APC meeting briefly, just mentioning that we should keep an eye out for the results and look into creating a stance around the results. And I think that this is something that should be brought back to APC and kind of discussed there before it's listed a bit definitively as a next step on this doc. So before that, I think APC should discuss whether or not we want to make a separate stance on this.
Before we get more into question 4, does anybody have anything to say other than about point 4? Other than about point 4, because I suspect I didn't notice anything else, and I'm wondering if other people are also only really care about discussing point 4. So that's communication to the board, stuff like that. Just so that we don't have to come back to it. Do you have something other than point 4?
Yeah, on the first point under like the some SLT members,
Sure.
was there any, like, did they give any reason why no one got on?
Actually, we did ask this with that. And the short answer was they were not selected. So we also asked students specifically, and they did not select students. It was we did not get details beyond the fact that it did not come up. I think that's how I understood Vivek's answer when Arya posted.
But I think he also mentioned that there would be opportunities for folks having input.
One of which is happening on November 14th. So, I've asked it to be added to the media package that goes out tomorrow about the ratification, that if people have direct feedback, November 14th, 10:30 in the morning, in the Black and Gold room is one of the feedback sessions for that.
Okay.
All right, do we want to spend the rest of the time on this motion arguing about point 4 now? Anything else?
Just a quick one.
Sure.
Point 3 on next steps, progress reports. Are they going to come from officers, staff, or just in staff curiosity for anyone who ever has any follow-ups?
I would expect for officers, they would be part of the normal report. We don't normally receive reports from advocacy on a monthly basis. That's something we would need to start doing, or is that more just like whenever there's progress, it would be added?
I think that if it's a priority of board, and this is a conversation is happening, it will come through the legal report, because there is an advocacy section.
Oh, sure. We don't need to make it special. Wilson,
I'm ready.
Melissa, you're comfortable with that, with those reports going as part of the ED report?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I think the assumption was that as we had updates, obviously you folks are having some regular connects with Andrina and some folks from the team, so you would hopefully be hearing from them in those conversations, and then we could formally make sure through the ED report that the rest of board get those as well.
Okay. All right, and now point 4. Arya, I think you immediately have to direct reply to Sarah's point 4.
So this is what I say. I don't think this should come to the advocacy positions committee because there is no advocacy positions to be created. The results are the position to begin with. So I just don't see the point of the committee having necessarily that say in it. It's what people voted on. So in practice, if we create advocacy positions on it, the committee has the authorization to amend that and change that, and there's the possibility that the whole thing can be changed to represent something that's completely out of spirit of what in the referendum results were. Advocacy positions committees have authority to bring up advocacy position reports or stances anytime they want and amend it however they want with respect to board's agreement. So to stay true to the referendum's principles and values and what the students voted on, I believe that the advocacy positions itself should just be the like what the students voted for. It shouldn't become a position that can be changed every year or overseen even by the committee. So I think it shouldn't be a committee thing. I would argue that it's best for it to just, I mean, it's mostly internal, so I would say the unit. And with me, whatever committees I sit on, to advocate to the university the stance of the students and work with undergrad relations as a chairman or whatever. So we can do it that way with the university.
Okay. My advice here is a little bit different. It's not actually that far off. I also concur that I think that the referendum kind of stands for itself. But in the discussions that I've already had, because the university was very quick to put out a response after the end of once the results were announced, they told us that we specifically should have a plan and tell them things beforehand. And it would be convenient to be able to point them to a stance specifically that explains our plan. So that, to me, helps us reduce friction with the university, is to have APC at minimum, even if we tell them very specifically that you can only have these 2 lines as the actual stance and the rest of it is just planning, I think would be something that would be my sort of minimum for me to feel comfortable without, stepping on some toes that maybe we don't want to with the university. That's how I feel, but I'll throw the floor back to you. Well, Alex, thanks.
Sure, I think that's good, as long as, yeah, I think the agency can create a plan, that's fine, a plan of action on how we wanna perhaps lobby the university. To pursue this, I don't know what that would look like, but I think it shouldn't be advocacy positions, like it shouldn't be what we have for others. Because it's a referendum that stands on its own. So I would be okay if that is positions going to be looking at it, but it would be more of them coming up with an action plan rather than creating an advocacy position. Like that's very important to distinguish. So if we make a plan recommendation of how the board goes about implementing this with the university, through what committees we bring that up, how we discuss it with them, like that's my compromise here. Which pretty much is saying I agree at that point.
I think, yeah, my main point here is I'd like it, I don't need it to be expanded too far because I think it's important to not drift from what we've actually asked. But I think there are probably some obvious steps, things like we don't have to have it as like a solid block of text. It could be each individual line of the text, but I feel like I'm waffling. Teresa. Good point.
Yeah, no, you guys make an excellent point that this stance should be shaped a little differently from the others and that the referendum does speak for itself. I think Sarah's original point does, still stand that it seems as though in the plan of action, the spirit of the advocacy stance is still safety and community, which is a bit of a misnomer still. So while you guys are correct, like we should definitely go in with like a more of a plan emphasized advocacy stance. I just think we should definitely be careful about how we refer to the stance. Not to get too into the weeds about naming and stuff. It's just that safety and community, like Sarah mentioned, is a bit of a deviation from the original intention of the submitted petition referendum.
I have Melissa next.
Thanks. Just to speak to that, I think that general point, I think the reason that safety and community was sort of brought up within the scope of this, knowing the number of discussions that have been happening sort of broadly around this topic as they relate to that freedom of expression and some of the different pieces that I think the committee is going to be looking at in terms of that community connection, respectfulness, diverse community, and some of the conversations that have been happening around this topic was sort of making sure some of that made it into this. But I don't disagree that some of the pieces around, for example, partnerships or investing or some of that doesn't fall. I think the goal is just looking at something broader than a very specific topic where we could have down the line groups wanting to bring other very specific instances that then would cause us to set the precedent to create those specific stances. So whether that means maybe APC have a discussion about, is there a need for a different advocacy position statement that covers things like responsible investments, for example, but taking more the high level spirit of where this comes from and what's been voted on, as opposed to getting into the specific details, knowing that that could open us up for many more very specific things in the past, in the future. So I think there's still discussion that might make sense to be had at APC. I think that's where the suggestion of some of the elements making their way into safety and community kind of came from.
Anyone on the speakers list?
No, I mean, not for point 4.
I would just like to make an amendment. So I would just ask, instead of saying an advocacy stance, to say advocacy plan. Because the stance has already been passed by the students. That's what I would like to amend it to. That also ensures that other boards can just change their.
I feel like we need to work on this a little bit, but Jack.
Quick POI for Arya. I think the motion itself doesn't refer to stances or plans. Like I think the action report is just an attachment. It's not what we're actually.
Yeah.
Oh,
so we don't have to.
This is not being passed. The report isn't being.
No, it's an attachment that we're discussing.
It's a motion.
We are the discussion itself is the important part.
Yeah.
The actual. This is just part of the.
Would look at this so. If they look at this, I don't have to say a stance, but I don't want somebody to say, let's have this and take on this. And I'll be like, that's not what the referendum was. So I think I showed previously, I would appreciate that stance being changed to plan. So no member thinks we're here to create stances, but this is already passed.
He's board of the opinion though that APC should should be working on things that are adjacent,
What do you mean by that?
like incorporating the result in with like then the context of like if there's an investment stance that eventually agency works on, that sort of thing.
Sure, that could be the plan. If there's, like, I don't, we could be incorporated, but we have nothing to incorporate it into right now.
Okay.
Like in theory, if ever stance comes up, the advocacy team would bring this up as something that stakeholders, like, it would pop up in theory.
Got it.
In practice, from my understanding, at least.
Okay. Well, having these off the speaking list, I think Zara, you've got a couple of specific. You said you had some general comments other than that, and then with that complete, we'll move to the vote.
Yeah, let me just think about what I was gonna. I think it's the first point. We talk about some previous research that's going to be presented. And I was mostly just wondering what that previous research is around, like I wanted to know more information about that specifically, if we have that.
I don't think I follow additional research. Do I just not see this?
So in next steps, the first point just
Oh,
says,
sorry, first step, next points.
yeah, we'll include the referendum results and insights from previous research conducted by WUSA. So I'm just curious as to what those insights look like in the previous research mentioned.
Melissa.
I think similar to the commentary around the safety and community, we did definitely get some different commentary, again, that falls generally in these areas that the committees are looking into through that safety and community RSP that I think, again, are sort of adjacent to the conversation that I think haven't formally been brought to those committees, so that if we're going to go to those committees and share the referendum results, those results from that survey as well would also probably be beneficial and at least eye-opening or educational, hopefully, for those folks as well. So just bringing any other learnings we've had from the last year or so from different student touch points and things that we've had in areas adjacent to this conversation. So I think that was sort of the general catch-all for what those different pieces might be, depending on the committee.
Cool. Thank you very much. Zara, additional questions?
Okay, thank you, Melissa. That makes a lot of sense. I just had one last question. I was wondering about what the plan is to communicate the developments made on this advocacy back to the students more generally, especially the people who raised the petition, but just in general, like communication with the student body as we work on this.
Oh, sorry, Melissa.
That's okay. I just am trying not to jump in and remember to use my hand. I think, Sarah, the conversation that we had was that we would try and make sure as we worked through these different stages, not only we would update the board, but that we could also have them in our board updates and potentially on the referendum page if we're going to keep some of that, let's say, for the next year while we have some of these meetings and try and move through some of this work that then we're updating students. So I think whether that's through our board updates, when we give those to you folks, that we make those synopsis for students, but that also we could update that referendum page. So I think the long and the short of it is when we share those insights and have those conversations, that we would share back to students that those items had been shared. I think in the potential release for tomorrow, as well as we share what the outcome is from board's discussion tonight, we would also let students know that we will get back to them as we go through some of those different steps, which we did outline or plan to outline in that communication, so that students know exactly what conversations and where we're planning to take these results. So definitely the goal would be to communicate that back through the referendum page, through some newsletter updates, and through board updates as well.
Sounds
I
good.
think that is the end of discussion. Okay. Well then, a vote on the second point here. Be it further resolved that the board authorizes the officers and advocacy staff, support staff to present the referendum results to the relevant University of Waterloo authorities and engage them on the next steps regarding implementation. And we've had quite an extensive discussion on plan, but this is just the authorization. Authorization. Nice. Okay, all four. Well, you second this or? Oh. 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. All abstentions. Oh, I need to lower my own hand. And all against. It appears that the motion carries, even though we didn't have quite everyone voting. It doesn't matter if there's not enough offset. That's life. It was more than half of all board voted for. We have no unfinished business. The information item, I think you were able to review earlier because it was a report of the CRO. And I think we're losing Alex because he has to work on a group work assignment. Thanks, Alex. But we're moving to some reports in a second here, which I think starts with the change engine as well as the rest of the ED report. Oh, someone is messaging me, so let me make sure it's not critically important. Oh, Fatima is also in favor.
But this should work. You guys continue.
Some of them are, like mine is plugged in, but I don't need the charge. If you use.
No, so maybe we're looking for this test.
Well, it's just probably not.
The motion for the. Oh, oh.
Okay. I think I turned over the floor to Suzanne for the next few minutes, both for change engine and your public reports. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't actually have a public report.
Okay.
This is an attachment. That is also sort of. This is a piece from my report that would be public, but before I think Melissa's going to do a little bit of a high level, but if you want to wait, just give me a second, Melissa, because the other piece that I didn't actually put in there, but that I wanted to update board on was the bus pass discussion and outcome, which would be that we agreed to the 2 years. We didn't agree. We went back and negotiated, and we came back and unnegotiated. Said your options are 2 years for the 5%, go to a referendum for 2025, or that the agreement expired.
So we did get an email today at like 3:30, but it's pretty likely that it'll be that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've read this. Go ahead if you're not.
5% increase.
5%.
Yeah, over the next 2 years.
Okay.
Never mind. It's also for the UPass working group, but it's the other meetings we're in, which is instead of yeah.
Just the board has approved that. And then the second piece was the launch of the change engine, which I think Melissa's going to give us a little bit of an overview of what that is and some highlights.
Take it away.
Well, can everyone else hear the boardroom okay, or am I the only one losing that connection a little bit?
Sorry, we didn't do the microphone.
Yeah.
When I was talking, so next time we'll do that.
We have a single microphone in the boardroom at the moment, as opposed to the usual two. So the only person who I know is able to be heard is me, because it's right in front of me, and I hope Jeff can be. But if it's, especially as we get farther down that end of the room, let us know if we need to have anything repeated. But anyways, you have the floor for the next little while.
Awesome. I'm not going to go fully through the change engine document with everyone. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to take a peek at it or can take a peek at it. Essentially, on our annual plan, we have talked about an advocacy pitch competition, a new opportunity for students to get involved with grassroots advocacy. And the advocacy pitch competition has been an idea in the works for the last year. We are excited to announce that it is going to be happening in January, and the name that we've gone with for the competition is the Change Engine. We will be opening up the applications for the competition any day now, or they may already be open. So promotion is going to be starting, and essentially just wanted you folks, as it is an annual plan priority, and as you are out there talking to students and potentially talking to other students who are passionate about certain advocacy areas on campus, wanted you to be able to help spread the word and the excitement, but also be able to answer questions if you did have any by students. So that was sort of the main goal in making sure you knew, 1, this is happening, 2, you could talk about it, and 3, if you've got any feedback from folks or excitement, you can send them to the website for that information, and hopefully we'll be seeing some exciting submissions come in. Obviously, it's our first year. We're working through the kinks. We're currently working through a little bit of the payment structure in terms of those winners, and creating sort of, have created a few different levels for folks to be able to apply within. So instead of giving a first, second, and third as per the initial sort of thought, we sort of have large, medium, and smaller categories. So folks can kind of self-identify whether they're looking to potentially do more of a advocacy awareness campaign, which might be sort of less on the cost side, but still something that's really important for them to want to get the word out about, versus something that might take some dollars and some hours, or something then in that larger category that might be more infrastructure, physical costs, things like that. So the other thing that I have been asked to just sort of plant the bug in your ear is we are going to ask for some of our directors to be on the judging panel. And so we are going to be coming back hopefully in the next month to formally ask for some folks who might be interested in that opportunity. So if you want to think about that, read a little bit more, reach out to me if you have any additional questions or things you might want to know in terms of deciding if that's something you might have the capacity for. It's a fairly low time commitment, would mean coming out to the event, having some insight into the folks who will be presenting on the night of. There'll be 6 presentations, 2 for each category, and then sort of choosing a winner, and then meeting at the night of the event to do some scoring and come back to the group with your decision on winners. So hopefully that's something that might be of interest to some of you folks. So think about that, think about what your commitments are in January, and we will come back to you with a formal request for some judges. And if anyone has any questions, I'm certainly happy to take them, but that's just sort of the update. I wanted to make sure you folks were armed with that information as you're having different conversations over the next few months.
Cool. Teresa, you have a question about what I will affectionately call the Change Gym.
Yeah, Nick stole my joke, actually. I just want to make this very clear. I privately made the joke that there was a missed opportunity to call the Change Engine the Change In, and he so shamelessly just stole a joke out of my mouth with no credit, no citation. I'll accept IEEE, by the way, Nick. But anyways, I just had a question about the mentorship sessions, Melissa, because I know it's mentioned for the top prize, the students get 3 one-hour mentorship sessions with an advocacy specialist. So what might that look like? What can students expect to get out of that?
Sure. I think depending on the project or the idea, it might be a little bit different. I think what we're hoping it looks like is being able to help students work through some of the different systems or structures or channels on campus to do whatever work it is that they're interested in doing. So for example, and I'm the worst with examples on the spot. I come up with random things just to connect things to. You know, if they wanted to do an awareness campaign, and let's say part of that was what are the different avenues on campus that they might be able to put those things out on. We could have conversations with them about the different avenues for posters and digital screens and you know, who they need to reach out to. If it's something that involves more talking to different committees and groups on campus about a particular issue, let's say it's about accessibility, the advocacy team may be able to work with them to identify the right folks that we may want to bring them or introduce them to go and have those conversations and meetings, and what things they might want to bring with them, whether that's a PowerPoint, certain statistics, materials, information. So really just dependent on their project, helping them figure out some of the steps in their plan, depending on how vetted out that already is when they come to the competition, and then helping them work through the on-campus systems and channels to kind of help take that to the next level. So just using the insights and experience that our team has to help them get the most out of that project and experience.
All right. And yes, I did steal Teresa's joke. I'm sorry. Yep. Jeff.
I'm also just a question about the dates. Is there a reason why the submission deadline is early December if we don't expect the event to take place till January? Just because that probably is also when people are switching focus into exam mode.
Yeah, so the thought is that not everybody who submits is going to be presenting. So if folks submit sort of just before exams get started, let's say, or by mid-exams, I guess, looking at that timing, our team then also has the opportunity to vet the submissions in advance and then let students know before they go on holidays if they're going to be one of the chosen folks to present at the actual in-person event. So those folks can then create the materials and the presentation that they would need for that event. So with the current assumption that we're going to get more submissions than the 6 folks that are going to be presenting live that night, similar to a Velocity event, the team needs to then vet those in advance and wants to be able to give students the break to potentially work on that presentation if that's something that they want to do. Does that make sense?
Teresa, another new point.
I guess reading through the proposal and like picturing like myself as a student seeing the change engine go live, my impression of this would be like, oh, if my idea gets picked, WUSA is going to like directly help me see this idea from start to finish. So I guess my question is like, how much support from like the WUSA advocacy level, like, you know, possibly bringing something like this to board and having WUSA advocate on this project, or lend like operational support to this project? Like, what are the limits that you see here? Because like my again, like if I was a student submitting a project, my impression would be, oh, like WUSA is going to help me do this, not necessarily like WUSA would help guide me to the right pathways on campus to see this happen, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, so I think the premise and how we want to promote the competition itself is that it isn't you're bringing an idea to WUSA and WUSA is taking that bringing idea to WUSA, and then WUSA isn't taking that idea and then bringing it to fruition. The goal is to help students have the opportunity to be involved in the advocacy work that matters to them. That's what we've heard in the past few years are things students really want to be involved with and on the ground with having that experience. And so this is sort of the opportunity that they can bring that forward. They can help receive some funding towards that through WUSA. So that would be sort of the, we've got the $10,000 that's set aside for this project specifically. So we get money to help with that. And then also sort of as much or as little support and guidance in those 3 sessions as they want. But it doesn't mean that because this is something that we, that gets picked as a winner through the change engine, that now board has adopted that and WUSA is going to operationally move it forward. If it's something that they want to bring more formally to the board to consider, that would be one of the things the advocacy specialists might work with them in those sessions to kind of identify if we're doing other projects like it that it might be connected to, and then maybe how to have that conversation about whether it fits with other things that are going on or not. But the goal isn't to take it away from students. I think there's also going to be a note on the website and stuff that the idea still remains sort of that of the student. And although similar projects or things might be going on or happening, you know, into the future, the goal isn't that then this becomes, you know, WUSA's intellectual property of an idea. It remains the students and something that we want to help them move forward and work through, but aren't taking away the opportunity for them to do that work. So there's no guarantee of additional money outside of the money that the winners get, and outside of those sort of 3 sessions, it isn't that they're being, you know, told that the thing that they want to bring forward is now going to be carried in flock stop as a, you know, that kind of thing. There's there's no promise to that more that will help support them in doing the work that they're interested in, they think would benefit campus.
Okay. An interesting thought there to try and make sure that we are not sending the wrong message when trying to help, which I know is one of the things when we were discussing the change engine in the sort of earlier stages, or I guess I shouldn't say we as much because somebody canceled the meeting in my calendar and then I missed it. Whoops. But when it was being discussed earlier, one of the issues there specifically that was brought up is like, how do we not make this feel like isolated? Like, we're not trying to like abandon projects because we're like, oh, that's not important, but like trying to make sure that we're giving that special support if we think it's a really good idea and very much doable, but also not rude. And that's something we continue to worry about. Anything more on the change engine from like questions mostly, I suppose? Any more questions on the change engine or other aspects of the executive director's report that will not be, sorry, the short aspect of the executive director's report that is in public session, like on GRT or change engine? Either of those is fine for now. That took me way too long to explain what I was looking for, but I don't see any. Thank you very much, Melissa. Oh, Teresa, what's up?
Sorry, I'm so sorry. I do remember a question I had about the GRT negotiations because like it's been a while since we had the discussion at board, but I feel like I remember reading that there was some discussion about possibly negotiating to have students refunded their GRT fees or portions of it if there were to be a strike. Was there any movement on that piece?
Yes, that's included.
Can you move that microphone down to Suzanne? Sorry, if you were. Yep, no, that's good.
I can repeat it as well. The short answer is yes. They're one of the few things in the negotiations that you could argue went well was expanded access to the ability to withdraw from the program. So this was particularly important for graduate students, those that are on leave, not necessarily on leave, but on like field work research and therefore not in the Waterloo region for a 4-month period, or that are actively writing their thesis and living away from the region because they're living at home or something along those lines. That was the majority of sort of gains in that field were for our graduate partners. For us, it was some slight expansion, but it's overall still very similar to the way you would see it. So I guess congratulations to graduate students and people doing field work. We have some students doing field work. I think many of us know personally people who've done field work as undergrads. So yeah, it does come up. It's just more common for graduate students than undergraduate students. Does that answer your question, Teresa?
I guess, well, you did answer the demographic of people that we need to withdraw, but I'm still wondering, like in negotiations, how did it come up? How amenable is GRT to these kinds of withdrawals or like refunds? Also, I was mainly asking like with regards to the strike or future strikes.
It's something that I know WUSA has asked about for several of the past negotiation processes. So they were relatively comfortable in adding that sort of refund. I think Mike is even, of course, Mike's more intelligible. Sorry, is better acquainted with this than I am. So as Mike has added, but I'll say it out loud so that people who don't read can hear. Mike says, I'll add more context here. Students already got partial refunds when a strike happened. This was expanded to include when the GRT might do extended system-wide free periods, such as a month of customer appreciation that came after the strike. So not necessarily more during the strike, but if they're doing free periods, getting compensated for free periods, because if you were like buying tickets every day, then you would not normally buy tickets every day. So Overall, still cost effective. So this is just cherry on top of a sundae on top of bolognese sauce. Cool. Should we move on to officer discussion? Sorry, officer reports open very quickly? Or do people have more to discuss about the GRT/change engine? Okay, we don't need to fight about bolognese sauce, Teresa. Sure. I'm going to take the fact that we've gotten into silliness as an indication to move on. Arya, do you want me to start for public or do you want to start for public?
I could start this one is really quick.
You have one important thing in your public.
That is.
Okay.
So my next report will have everything else you need to know about life. The only important thing is UCRU has accepted our withdrawal and we are now officially completely gone. I do have a point of information. Like I just want to know how many director reports have we gotten in and a reminder of why you should get your director reports in if you have none.
I was told we're getting one more during the meeting than whatever the current number is. Though I don't actually know what the current number is because I haven't checked today yet.
Just a reminder so nobody misses out on that stipend to make sure.
Yeah.
Submit your director.
Get your director appointed so you don't.
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. That's it from me.
So I hope that one was clear. That's probably Arya's one statement there is more important than most of what I have to say today, which is, yeah, UCRU no longer a member. Which was that the decision in September even?
So it's interesting because I got that email in like they took their time. So I got that in October, the email.
It's just we've been
and it was
a longer period between board meetings this time.
Yeah, and the chair was just like, thank you, approve. Thank you. Doesn't find us, which is doesn't sue us, which is that makes sense. That's for sure. But,
I guess for my update, I'll start with some fun stuff. I did a lot of presenting of the safety RSP. I think that's probably the highlight of my past month. You can read more details, of course, about other things I got up to. But I went to a lot of different groups. We talked about it briefly with the Office of the President. I also went to the Student Success Office, the Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Anti-Racism Office, the Graduate Student Relations Committee, Undergraduate Student Relations Committee. A lot of different groups and that's all part of our existing plan to look at, not this year, but for like long-range plan, et cetera. They're bringing back Safe Walk. And the other aspect that came out of those recommendations was lighting, which I know that at the next USRC meeting, we have somebody to actually talk about campus safety with respect specifically to path illumination, which was something that students said in the RSP. Hey, why is it dark? It's a very common concern at night. What a surprise. That's my main highlight. Was there anything else? I did something fun, which was I wrote down all the committees that I'm either on or I delegate to. It's about 65, which that's kind of crazy. I also did a lot of interviews, some of which didn't work out well. That's my update. Do we have any directors that feel they need to give? Oh, co-op fee, which I can't talk about, but co-op fee. We'll do more in confidential if we need to, but
I have a question.
Teresa.
Oh no, I thought you were gonna start talking about it, and I also wanted to say some stuff, but yeah, that's sorry.
Sorry.
I mean, it's probably going to come to Co-op Student Council like next month. So if nothing else, we can definitely delve into it at the next board meeting.
So we're not really allowed to go into specific. Actually, I could probably talk about that part. We're not allowed to go into specifics right now because we told them we wouldn't. But given the numbers that they gave us, I then proceeded to talk to a couple of people and said, I don't like that number. Please make it 0% increase.
Oh.
So that's what I've been up to. Is I've done a couple of meetings with, for instance, I've talked to the provost and some other members of various finances and planning things about the fact that we were uncomfortable with the number that they presented, and I'm not allowed to tell you why. Sorry.
Why is it confidential if I may?
Oh, because they had us sign an NDA until the numbers.
Okay, and you can't tell us that a board confidential session either.
I don't think that's appropriate.
Okay.
The rough number is larger than you'd like. It is uncomfortably large. That's as
Nick, please be careful what you say here, man. Please.
Yeah, uncomfortably large. hence why I was going into these other meetings.
Maybe what you can say is it follows current trends that we have been seeing in the co-op fee in recent years, and we'll leave it at that.
Only it hasn't. So
Do you?
okay, let's go. Let's move on. Let's move on.
Let's go next. Let's not talking. Let's not it.
Yeah, what's the first rule of co-op club? Don't talk about co-op clubs.
For sure. Director reports. Does anyone feel important to talk about the director report? Cool. Seeing none. Oh, Teresa.
Sorry, I feel like this always happens where you're about to move on, and then I put my hand up, and I feel like I'm like a baseball player that's just sliding onto the home plate or whatever it is. And I'm just barely safe. I do think it's worth mentioning that Nick, Aria, and I did sit down with our local MPP, Catherine Fife, to discuss unpaid and underpaid internship regulations, specifically with regard to students in accredited co-op programs. Particularly the fact that we, under the Employment Standards Act, employers are not legally obligated to pay us equitable wages because of the fact that we are in a co-op program. And so due to a number of factors in recent years, we're seeing that this is increasingly becoming an issue. So we're hoping that this is the start of more discussions with regards to student labor issues in the province. So if there's anything that comes to mind, either like a personal experience for you or something that you know is common throughout the student population, I'm probably already familiar with it, but I would love to chat and get insights from the rest of the board members so we can continue bringing these discussions to our local government representatives. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Excellent. Let's move to confidential. I think let us know, Mike. I won't ask senior leadership to step away while me and Arya deliver our confidential. Do you have a confidential report? I have one item, and then we'll move into the more complicated situation as we get deeper in. Hi, Nosh. Welcome back. This is the end of the meeting, but I'm supposed to give an update on the votes that occurred during the meeting. We had an item from IT that passed, and an item from the executive director addressing recruitment and retention that passed. That brings us to the end of our board meeting today. So I guess we'll do the vote to adjourn. All against adjournment. All abstaining from adjournment. All right, votes for adjournment. That looks like it. Okay. Thank you very much.
Very
That
good.
is
Good
the
seeing
board meeting.
everybody. Thank you for having
Thanks
me
for
here.
coming down.
Yep. Okay. Bye-bye for now.
Mm-hmm.